I want to bring in Flavio Volpe now. He is the president of Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. Flavio, good morning to you. Okay,
Thanks, man.
what are you hearing? Premier Ford is saying this report is inaccurate. We've got this news reporting from a paper in Japan. Reuters picked it up saying that Alstom could be facing a big blow. What do you know at this point?
Well, look, it's indicative of all of the major auto manufacturers that operate in North America, whether they manufacture or import there, doing contingency planning. They're planning for plans. I don't think that Ontario's footprint will be affected by this. This is an early report that says, as we see whether this tariff chaos becomes semi-permanent, as we see what happens in our USMCA review next year, what do we do with the product mix? What's important for your viewers to know about that Alstom plant is that's a very flexible plant that has been used over the course of the almost 40 years that Honda's been making cars here to launch new models. As they really get down pat quality issues, production issues, scale issues, those models then get launched in other plants. It's also the global lead plant for Civic. And one of the few examples that we have where we export cars outside of the continent. So I expect that this is going to give some people some anxiety. But what we've been saying to suppliers to that plant today, too, is that Honda is an excellent partner that never in a moment of crisis, much like Toyota, has ever scaled back their production or laid anybody off. We just kind of work the product mix there. It's more of an indication of just how crazy it is to work in daily inflections in tariff policy in an industry that makes commitments that are 10 and 20 years horizon. Honda made a very big announcement, the biggest investment announcement in that company's history and in this country's industrial history not too long ago. And they didn't do that because it was the flavor of the day. They did that because they contingency planned on where other markets that are accessible from here for their operations, and then the types of people and supply chain that they have here.
Okay, so just for... Go ahead.
It's that anxiety that has us all, responding every time something happens, and it's legitimate. But in this case, I'm much more confident than some other people this morning.
Okay. So you're with Premier Ford.
Yeah, and I think the Premier said he spoke to Honda. I think we all spoke to Honda, and we're going to hear from Honda today.
Okay, a bit of background for you and for our viewers. We know that Japan is sending its chief negotiator to Washington this week, I believe tomorrow, to sit down with the U.S. Treasury Secretary and trade representatives to talk about how to work things out. In the meantime, as you so rightly point out, there is a high level of anxiety for every auto worker and those who are even remotely associated to the industry and what it could mean. So what do you say to those people in Alstom right now, those over 4,000 workers in Ontario who are really worried right now about their future?
Well, I represent a lot of suppliers that supply into that facility, so it's a very current conversation. What we say to them is that Honda is especially very good at build where you sell, which means they can adapt as they look over the next several years on what Canadian demand could be on model. And I think your viewers might not know that the Honda Civic is consistently the best-selling car in Canada. It's important. Canadians love to buy Hondas. And so there is local demand for Honda here. It's not a scenario where it's an automaker that's making cars that Canadians don't like. They just happen to be making it in Canada. And so there is a lot of meat on the bone here to work with Canadian demand. And, the Japanese government is headed to Washington to do what a lot of other governments are doing, which is get a little bit of clarity, remind Washington subtly that they do have some leverage because they're heavy investors in the U.S. They are American investors and American employers. And I think it's part of the reason why you heard the president say yesterday, I'm considering making some changes to tariff policy because some of these companies need more time. Look, I think every one of these companies, we shouldn't be naive about. These are publicly traded companies that are in a business of making cars for profit, and they have to, they have a fiduciary obligation to their shareholders to remain solvent.
Yeah,
But in this specific case, Canadians love Hondas, and they buy the Hondas that are made at this plant, and we can work with them.
Yeah, and I'm being told over 55,000 just in Alliston. But I think what concerns people is, could the negotiations include moving something out of Alliston to appease Donald Trump, to appease White House officials?
Well, Japan isn't China, so these aren't state-owned companies. These are independent companies. Yes, there's a lot of influence, and there's a lot of interplay between the public and private sector in Japan. But just like Donald Trump can't tell General Motors what product to make and sell, the Japanese don't do that either. The Japanese also are very close partners with Canada, and this 90-year diplomatic relationship and this 40-year automaking relationship is based on long-term arcs. And the one thing we do know is that while Donald Trump is here for the next 4 years and he's not going to change, you make capital investments looking at 20-year returns in automotive. And there is a very real and healthy business for Japanese automakers in Canada. They make some of the best products in the market, in consistently rated the most productive facilities on the planet. Toyota's facilities in Woodstock and Cambridge are ranked as high, if not higher, than all of their plants in Japan. So I don't ever expect the Japanese to sell out Canada. And if they wanted to, they couldn't, because it's not a centrally planned economy.
Flavio Volpe, so glad that you could join us this morning. Really appreciate your perspective. As always, Flavio is the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. We understand that Honda is supposed to be sending out a statement. We hope that comes soon, and we'll clarify things for all of us today. All right, let's turn back to Montreal.